I figured I'd just start by introducing myself. My name is Aiden Leary. I use the he series pronouns. I am a junior at Emerson. What else is there about me? I'm a VMA. I mean, you probably assume because I'm doing this workshop. Um, I'm drinking a lot of water today. That's just something else about me, I guess. Um, if you're here, I'm assuming that you're interested in producing. Producing is something that I've gotten into mostly when I'm at Emerson. It's, I mean, again, I'm mainly a director, but when you're at Emerson, if you want to make projects, you usually end up producing something at some point. And I've produced a few shows in my time here. Let's get started. I'm just going to pull up the presentation real quick. Oh, wait, no, that's not it. All right, give me a sec, guys. Are you guys seeing the presentation? Someone just speak up.
Yeah,
No, yeah.
just like your desktop.
Okay, it was my desktop with all like the mess there is on there. Give me a sec, guys. I literally just had up a minute ago and now it's not here, but I'll find it. There it is. Okay. Now I got it. All right, you guys all seeing this? So, as I said, I've produced a lot of shows, but this workshop is focused not on just producing, but on producing when things go wrong. I was going to call this producing when shit happens, but EIV wouldn't let me. But that's basically what it is producing is messy. When you haven't produced a show yet, I'm not sure what your guys' experience is, but you go and you think, okay, I want to have a show that goes smoothly, don't want any hiccups, but producing is messy. It never goes according to plan. And a lot of those things are things that they could be mistakes, or they could be like, there could be technical issues, things you don't anticipate, and they often like blindside you and come out of nowhere. It's happened more times than I can count to me, my time producing shows. Um, and there will pretty much always be situations that are just out of your control, that you as a producer have to deal with, because as a producer you'll find that you're the one that everyone on your crew looks to, depending on, you may have, but so anywhere between like 20 and 50 different members on your crew, they all look to you when something goes wrong. And it's up to you to recover. So that's what I'm covering here, is how do we recover? And for producing, I like to take inspiration and wisdom from one of my all-time favorite philosophers, Batman. Um, if you couldn't tell already, I'm a little bit of a nerd, but here's what you need to know about Batman is prepared for every situation. He's ready to take on pretty much anything. If you're like me, I used to like the old like Justice League cartoon when I was a kid. As you can see there, that image I have right there is Batman taking on Amazo, which is like this unstoppable robot dude. But how does this apply to producing? How do you be like Batman? Well, there's sort of a difference, at least in the way I do things, between planning and preparation. Batman is prepared, right? But I'll get to that. So planning versus preparation. Planning is, like the definition of planning that I found online, is a set of intended actions, usually mutually related, through which one expects to achieve a goal. So what does that mean for producing? Planning is it's like one of the most essential parts of producing is, when you're going to have a shoot, have a set, you need to get secure location, you need to contact a whole bunch of people about that. And you end up making a production schedule, which you hope to, stick to. If you're producing, and I mean, this is more of a director DP thing, but a lot of people double up. Like for me, for instance, I'm producing a show called Final Girl right now for EIV, but I also direct Final Girl. So you'd also be dealing with the shot list, which I'm sure most of you have dealt with shot lists before. Permitting, it's a big part of producing. You just schedule rehearsals, get crafty, get equipment, plan transportation for the equipment, different things like that. Um, Whereas preparing, for me at least, is a lot different. Both are very important, but preparing is to be ready or able to deal with something, able to do or deal with something. And what that means is, for me at least, especially when you're producing a set, is mental preparation. Um, because you need to be prepared to throw your plan out the window. You're going to, like I said, you're going to make a production schedule. You're going to hope to stick to that schedule. But when you're on set, sometimes things just have to go out the window. So you have to go into a set assuming the worst. Assume that things are not going to go according to plan. Assume that something wrong is going to happen. And keeping that open mind um, will help you kind of be more like willing and flexible to improvise, and change up the plan even when you're on set last minute, because stuff is going to happen. So and a lot of this stuff you learn through experience. Um, and through experience, I've created myself these steps to follow. I made the acronym UMG because I'm really bad at making acronyms. But anytime you're faced with a situation, I would say take these steps. Something goes wrong on set. So the first thing you have to do, if something goes wrong, let's say it's an equipment malfunction, let's say it's almost set and someone decides that they can't make it, like a key crew member. First thing you need to do is evaluate the situation. So what went wrong? How is this going to stand in the way of my production? What issues is the situation going to cause for us? The next thing you have to do is to say, what are your priorities? And I'll go over that in the next slide. But once you determine what your priority is, you need to measure your options. Say, all right, let's say there's an issue and you run out of time to shoot something. You say, okay, my options are I can either cut this from the scene, or from the show. We can keep the crew late, shoot it now, or we can schedule another day to shoot it. Like basic things like that. Those are what your options could be. And once you measure your options, like when you're doing that too, take a step back, because oftentimes, these situations will be not issues with the schedule. They'll be issues with people a lot of the time too. So in the measuring your options step, be sure to also take a second, really, collect your emotions. If you're feeling upset or angry with someone, you can't, as a producer, you have to be professional. You can't let that come out. So that all falls under that step. Next, once you've evaluated your options, see what's the best way to do this, you just got to make your decision. And once you do that, you got to stick to it. Because then that just creates more issues. You'll come off as indecisive, you'll come off as someone who doesn't know what they're doing. And as a producer, even when you don't know what you're doing, people have to think that you know what you're doing. I've learned that a lot in my experience. And like I said, once you make that decision, get it done. Your biggest job, like people who don't know film, and you guys all do, but people who don't know film will ask me like, oh, so what does a producer do? What's the difference between a director and a producer or whatever? A producer, you have to get things done. That's like your job. Is if you can't get things done, then you're not, you're in the wrong job. And you have to make sure that others get it done too, and get the show done. So like I said, priorities, right? What are your priorities when you're producing? And so these are when I'm going through a difficult decision, what are the priorities that I hold to be the biggest thing? And I would hope that this is universal for all productions. I would say for you guys, I would say keep these universal. Like these are important. And these are all, basically ranks. So what are your priorities when you're facing a situation? The most important thing on a set, no matter what, is the health and safety of your cast and crew. These are people especially on an Emerson set, they're working on your project for free, taking time out of their crazy busy schedules. Um, and if you can't guarantee them at the very minimum safety, that's an issue as a producer. Um, and I'll get into more situations about, when that comes across, but that's like no matter what, your number one priority. Number two priority is get the project done. A lot of people would think, you see down there, I have the third one as the quality of your work, right? Which is all three of these are super important, more important than anything else. But the way I think about it is, what does the quality matter if you don't have anything to show for it? Like, there'll be some people who get too caught up in, no, I want my show to be this way. I want my film to be this way. I want it to work like this. But oftentimes you do need to sacrifice some creative ideas just to get it done. And there are so many EIV shows, like so many that just people work on. Because I haven't worked on as many other people's shows recently as I've been working on my own, but especially like freshman year, I'd work on all these people's shows. I'm sure you guys have all worked on different shows. And there are just so many that, like, you see the pitch, you work on it, you're really excited for it, and then just nothing happens with it. It's never heard from again. They don't get it done. And a lot of the time that is because people are like, oh, I want it to be this way, I want it to be that way, and they'll get caught up in that, and then it just doesn't end up getting finished. But obviously the quality is also important, because let's say you get it done and it's a piece of shit, it really doesn't matter either. But overall though, like, in the future, right? When you're talking about on a resume, you're trying to apply for an internship or something, talking about all these projects you've worked on, it's going to be a big deal if you get it done. Like a 30-minute project, like let's say it's a 30-minute film or a series with 3 10-minute episodes, which is usually the EIV standard, something around there. If you say that you got that done, that looks huge. So why am I teaching this workshop? Is basically because like, it's not like I'm like better than anyone else. I'm not like a master at this. I'm not a professional film producer, but I have experience producing multiple different shows. So this right here, I'm taking you back to the very beginning of my producing experience, which was the show that I tried to pitch to EIV called Haunted Emerson. And when I was a kid, I was really into those, like, like the ghost hunter shows, where they like do research on this haunted mansion or something or whatever, and they go in and investigate. That's basically what this was. Because I did some research and found out that Emerson's Colonial Theater is actually considered to be one of the most haunted buildings in Boston. So I was like, that's cool. I'll make a documentary. That'd be awesome. And so I went to pitch the show, again, planning to shoot in Emerson's Colonial Theater. And I had my pitch ready, had my producing team, I had everything all set. I was filling out the scheduling form and all these different things you have to prepare for the pitch. I'm sure you guys will all go to pitch workshops if you're looking to pitch a show. They'll detail all that in there. But had all this stuff ready, right? One thing I was waiting on was a response from the Colonial Theater, because I had sent them an email weeks ago and got no response. And we're all ready to pitch. It's like a week away from, when the EIV pitches due. And we get an email back saying, oh, sorry, we don't let students shoot things in the Colonial. And me and my producing team we're like, whoa, and the issue was we had a week until the pitch. We had no backup plan. We had no other options. We were just assuming, oh, it's Emerson. They'll let us shoot anywhere, right? So this was a failure. I'd never even ended up pitching it. Like, I didn't even meet with the IV. I didn't get any of it done. But what I learned from this experience, and again, as I said earlier, you're going to learn all this stuff through experience. And that's all I have to offer you guys, is I have a whole lot of experience of failing and messing up and getting things wrong. So that's what I'm hoping to share with you guys, just what I've learned from my own mess ups. But you can definitely learn from failures like this. The next time I went to pitch, I felt so much better because I'd already done all the process before for the most part. and I knew to be ready in case, something goes wrong. And again, that was when the first time I really came across the idea of you need to be ready for the plan to go wrong. And that's what we weren't ready to do, because like we said, okay, we're shooting in the Colonial and didn't have any backup options, any backup like places throughout Emerson, like or in Boston. Boston's one of the most haunted places in the world. If you believe in that thing. But we didn't have any backup options, and you need to be flexible, willing to say, okay, we're no longer shooting in the Colonial. Um, and we weren't ready for that. And they also again, we emailed them, and it took them like 2 weeks to respond to us. And honestly, what I should have done is just moved on to the next person after they didn't respond after a couple days, like I said, this was my first big failure, but the first show I got to produce was Breaking News, which was actually for the Emerson channel, not for EIV. But that was a pre-existing show. It went on for like 16. No, I did season 16. This was my first semester sophomore year. And I was basically offered, I was talking to this guy, and he was like, oh yeah, I produced a show last year, Breaking News. We kind of had some issues with it. They basically, like I said, it's a satire news show. They do it in the studio. And unfortunately, the previous year, I don't think they had gotten any episodes done. Like, I don't think there was a single episode that came out. And there were several issues and reasons why that happened. But he basically said, and we can't find anyone to take over the show this next semester. And I was just like, I'll do it. And we interviewed, and I told him I had experience from high school kind of with producing and things like that. So I got the show, but I was a sophomore, first semester sophomore year, like a lot of people are producing shows. And I was walking into a show working with juniors and seniors, and something that I'd really never done to this extent before. So like I said, it was a learning experience. But when you get a show, the first thing you have to do that's really important is building your producer team. And Breaking News really taught me how to build a good producing team. For the Emerson channel, they usually only do 2 producers. EIV usually use 3. But a big important first rule is don't necessarily just go to your friends, because sometimes you'll have friends who maybe you're friends with them, you talk about creative ideas all the time, but people slack off a lot. And there are people who are like that, especially when you're friends, because it's difficult for someone it's difficult to say, hey friend, get this thing done. So that's a very important thing. Another thing is when you're looking to produce a show, EIV's typical format is 3 producers, right? Creative producer, logistical producer, technical producer. Pretty straightforward. Okay, creative producer handles, usually oftentimes they'll be the director. They handle all producing decisions. With a show like Breaking News, it was more like the showrunner. So we were the head writers, creative producers. Logistical producer handles permitting, scheduling, all that crafty things like that. Then technical producer who handles equipment reservations, things like that, which is a cool system, very simple. The issue is this causes a lot of restrictions, and you wouldn't think about it, but on Breaking News, for instance, the previous seasons, Breaking News you deal with, because it's a weekly, not a weekly, but what I guess monthly show, that news, you need to write things last minute. So we had a writing team of, I believe, 10 people. And in the previous years, the producers had a lot of issues with the writing team. They wouldn't write things. And part of the issue why was because they had those divides. And the guy who I was talking to right about all the failures for the show, he was the technical producer of that show. And the issue is he would say to the writing team, oh, hey, can we get this written? Can you make this deadline? And they would basically say, oh, you're the technical producer. We don't need to listen to you because you're technical. So what I found with my time in EIV is with both Breaking News and my EIV show, I actually don't use those restrictions. We still kind of have creative, logistical, technical. Like we'll divide up the tasks of those people, right? But when we're talking to our crew or something, like introducing ourselves to our crew, it's not like, hey, I'm Aiden, I'm the creative producer. Because when you do that, they think, okay, you're the person I go to for creative stuff. And if someone else approaches me about that, they're not going to listen. And I worked on another show, Peter's Picture Palace, that I directed. I didn't produce it though. And I remember I was on set, and some of the logistical producers were trying to say some things to like one crew member, and they were like, "Oh yeah, okay," and then they didn't listen. And the reason why was because it was coming from a logistical producer, and they were thinking, "Oh, this is a creative decision. I don't need to hear about that." So really, if you want to use these divisions, that's fine, but don't like limit yourself. You know what I mean? Um, and a lot of people won't tell you this, but that's what I've learned in my experience. Um, the first episode of Breaking News, which was my biggest failure on the show, so basically, right, we had an episode, we had a shooting block, we were shooting in the Tufty studio, permitting, everything done. We got in the studio, got our cast ready, they were in their places, we were getting the lighting ready, and we were all set to go, all ready, and all of a sudden my director says, "Hey, we can't go up yet." And I'm like, why can't we go up yet? And he's like, there's some audio issue. And we go in, and it turns out that the studio audio system was broken. It just didn't work. Which like I said before, a lot of these things aren't on you. They just happen. But we were waiting, right? We waited and waited. It was like an hour and a half before the studio was able to fix the issue. And we had a 30-minute episode to shoot. It's live shot, so it just takes 30 minutes. But we had a 30-minute episode to shoot, and we just didn't have the time because we had to wrap. And the crew basically looked to me and my buddy Dylan, who was producing. Again, he was also a great producer. But they looked to us and said, "All right, what are we gonna do?" We were like, "We don't know." And what we decided to do was, we had the studio set up, we had everything ready, so we made a promo. We didn't have the time to shoot a full episode. We just made a short, like 5-minute promo, and then basically said, "Okay, so we had a promo that we could use." But I remember I went to bed that night, and I was like, and you'll feel this if anything ever goes wrong, and it will. I went to bed and I was like shit, I feel like a failure right now, because we had 4 episodes to shoot that semester. We had 4 days scheduled for shooting the episodes, and the first one was gone. So what I learned from that experience was, always check your tech early, right? And that being said, do things early. Like, our studio time was 6 o'clock. Go in at 5 o'clock. Go in at 5 o'clock. Make sure everything's working. Check with the studio. You have a question?
They're not letting us do that this year. You can't go because you have to have the strict time.
So
just wanted to throw that out there.
That's annoying. Oh my gosh. Phone call. Sorry. Well, that's annoying, isn't it? Sorry guys, give me a sec. My parents decided to call me at the worst possible time. But yeah, so they're not letting you do that. What I would say then is, in normal years, go early. But still, be there, even so, if you can't be there an hour early, they're not going to stop you from being there 15 minutes early. Like, if you waiting outside the studio, and oftentimes the studio is not even being used. So you can be there 15 minutes early and just go in when you, just because if no one's using it, they're not going to stop you from going in. Technically, you can, but usually they're not going to stop you. That's secret producer insider info. They're not necessarily going to stop you, at least not that I know of. Sorry, guys. Give me a sec real quick. I'm going to pull this presentation back up. Okay. Anyways, another thing I learned from that experience was to be persistent. When I say that, because we lost our first episode shooting date, right? We were like, all right, I still want to get this episode done. We had a funny episode written. It worked. So I basically went in to Tony, studio guy, great guy, really flexible, just amazing. But I kept having to say to him, like, can we get another date? Can we get another day? Can we do this day? Can we do that day? And he ended up bending the rules for us and letting us shoot on Indigenous Peoples Day, I believe it was, which was awesome because we were able to get our first episode done. And I think if I'd let that failure of we can't get this shot stop me, I would have, sat in bed and be like, all right, we're just not going to screw it. Let's not get this episode done. Like I said, priorities. Number 2, get the episode or the show, whatever, done. Another thing I learned from breaking news is how to delegate tasks, especially amongst producers. You're going to learn that a lot of the time you have to, when you're working with people, be somewhat willing to sacrifice what you might call your creative vision or your plan, whatever you got, because when you're working with people, there's a lot of stuff you need to be flexible about. Like working with writers, for instance. When I was working with writers, they would want to write an episode about something, and I would say, I kind of want to have this episode be about something else, but the whole writers' room wanted to write about, that one topic for the theme for the episode. And I was like, all right, it's not going to be good if they don't want to write it. So like if I force them to do a topic. So oftentimes, if you give people that creative freedom they want, they're going to work better for you. When you're delegating tasks specifically, assume people assume people don't know what to do. Like assume people like you can't just assume people know what to do. So make sure, what I do oftentimes is with my producing team, I'll make a list and say, all right, in the next week, we need to get these things done. That could be like, okay, this person get the permit done. This person schedule rehearsals, things like that. Make sure everyone knows exactly what to do and the deadline of what to do, which is where I get to what I call the Ken method. The Ken method is just a me thing. But Ken is my dad. This right here is Ken. And here's the thing about Ken is he's late for everything, literally everything. And in high school, I didn't have a car. So I would need him to drive me everywhere. And the issue is if I need to get somewhere on time, I would say, let's say I need to get somewhere by 5:30. He would show up late and get me there by 6. It'd be a half an hour late. So what I learned from Ken over there is when you're doing things, shoot for 30 minutes sooner, or shoot for let's say you're scheduling something like, all right, we need to get the permits done a week in advance. Try to get them done 2 weeks in advance. Like shoot early with all of your deadlines. And that way, if anything goes wrong, if anything bad happens, you can spill over. And when I say that, you can do that with others. Like, let's say, there's one person you're working for. Like, let's say you're talking to your production designer, for instance, and that they're going to be, you have some props for them to get, and they're going to be late with it. Tell them a few days, like, all right, we need the props ready. Like, say you need them by October 28th. Say to them, hey, we need them by October 24th, and that'll give them a little bit of extra spillage. And if anything wrong happens, that'll be fixed. But also do that with yourself too, because that always gives you room. And especially like for me, like if anything wrong happens, it's always going to be a setback with anyone really. And if you give yourself that extra time to get things done, you will never be late for a deadline. So next, after breaking news, I decided to pitch a show to EIV that I'm still making right now, unfortunately, because of COVID. But Final Girl, which is a short horror comedy miniseries and I'll just get right into that. So, with Final Girl, obviously, like I said, never expect that a project isn't going to have a few speed bumps, and we had a few. So the first, kind of like issue we had was with cast and crew hiring. Like I said, building a producer team is very important, and that's what benefited here. But so we were, you have hiring weekend. Um, for those of you who haven't produced anything yet, you go in. You'll have, say, on Saturday you'll have cast rehearsals, or sorry, no, yeah, Friday you'll have cast tryouts. Saturday you'll have crew interviews, and then Sunday you'll have callback for cast, and then basically Sunday night you have to decide on, who your cast members are, so you can tell EIV. And I remember we just couldn't decide on the cast. I had 4 producers, and we were just going back and forth to a point where we ended up, it was 4 a.m. and there was this one role that we just couldn't decide on. And some producers there were basically 2 top people. Some producers wanted one person, some producers wanted another, and we were completely divided. But we kept going and going, and people wouldn't really budge. But there was one producer who I worked with who said something to me where she was just like, look, we need to get this done. Let's just decide. Who do you think? Go. And we all went, and we still had some issues, but then we were just like, all right, we need to decide. So let's do it. And we decided. And obviously, what I learned from this whole experience is completing the show is the top priority. If, like I said earlier, if you have to sacrifice a little bit of your creative vision, that's okay. If you end up with a cast member who you didn't really initially envision or didn't really want, oftentimes if your other producers want that same person, it's going to work out. They're going to be good. And a lot of the time you're going to look back and say, oh, I'm happy we went with that person. So just being flexible and willing to compromise is more important than like getting your way, because sometimes if you just hammer in and get your way, that's how producing teams break up. And I've seen that happen so many times. Is creative differences, one producer always gets their way, and like you'd be surprised, but it happens a lot. And just learn to be flexible, to get your way sometimes, but sacrifice your way the other times will help you get things done. So besides that, our first major roadblock was the script, because we had a 24-page script, right? Which we'd been planning on for the entire time, but I think it was a week before shooting our first weekend. All of a sudden, we got an email from EIV, and they said, basically, yo, your script is 28 pages. Why is it 28 pages? The script you gave us is 24. You can't shoot more than that. They said basically one of our own crew members had actually felt uncomfortable and brought their concerns to EIV, saying that we were shooting too much. And you get an email like this, and your first, at least our whole producing team's first reaction was like, who said it? Like, who ratted on us, first of all? And second of all, we were thinking, like, why is our script so long? Because we had thought it was 24 pages initially, but instead of, like, again, the first thought was who said it, but then we were thinking about it for a little bit, and we were like, does it really matter who said it? The main thing is that here's an issue in our way. What do we do to deal with it? And like I said, it's a lot about a mindset, right? And your top priority is always the health and safety of the cast and crew. And a lot of that's mental health too. Like, you shouldn't be putting anyone in a mentally compromising situation. And so if they didn't feel comfortable with shooting a certain amount, say the 28 pages, their concerns are valid. Like, again, they are willing to take time out of their day for you. You should not be putting them in a situation that is going to make them feel uncomfortable. So we were talking about that, and we're like, you know what? It doesn't matter who said it. Their concerns are valid. And it makes perfect sense that they would want to, you know, they wouldn't want to bite off more than we could chew, for instance. And then so we then after, you know, evaluating the situation and looking at priorities and things like that, we look back at the script, right? And saw that the reason why we had 24 pages was actually because we had added 4 more pages. The reason why was because there was one scene that was about half a page that we'd added without telling EIV, which was our biggest mistake, I would say. But because of that, it messed up for some reason, because we wrote on Google Docs, which is probably a bad idea in the first place, but it messed up the formatting for the entire script. So literally it added like 3 pages just on formatting. So we ended up emailing EIV saying, "Oh, we're sorry, we added this much, we'll cut it down." And we also explained to them a lot of it was the format. And from that, a big thing I learned is you need to be transparent with your studio, because they will not be happy if you just add a bunch of stuff that they didn't want or that they didn't expect. So I've taken that a lot into future situations. If you're ever going to change anything about your script or what you're shooting or your shooting dates, like the first people you have to let know is EIV. Or if you're going to produce with the like Emerson channel, same thing with Emerson channel. Let Emerson channel know immediately if you're going to change anything. The next roadblock we hit is like the biggest roadblock of all time, COVID-19. Because so our first weekend, right? We'd gotten our first shooting weekend done last year, and we thought, okay, we'll have a second shooting weekend. You know, no big deal. And then we get back from spring break, and we were set to shoot March 14th and 15th. And I think it was the 11th, the 10th when we got back. And all of a sudden, like that was the week when everyone was like, oh no, there's this virus. It's going to, you know, stuff's going to happen. And that was the same week Emerson closed down. At the end of that week was when they said classes aren't happening anymore. So all of a sudden, it was like, what, are we not going to be able to shoot? And we had to make the decision quickly. All right, do we shoot, like, because EIV said, all right, we've been cleared. You can still shoot this weekend, the weekend of the 14th and the 15th. Because I was at first, Emerson didn't think they were going to close down all the way, and they were like, you can take precautions and things like that. But we were looking at it and we were like, look, we really don't. And like at first we we're like, okay, let's shoot, let's get it done, because we might not get it done next semester. But we took a little bit of time and looked at it. And what are your priorities? Top one is the health and safety of your cast and crew. Like I've said, like 50 times in this entire workshop, that's your top priority. And with COVID-19, we didn't know what it was. All we knew was that it was killing people. And in order to get to our set, we would have needed to take public transportation. We really couldn't have socially distanced. So we thought, is risking that really more important than getting our, you know, is that, like, what's more important, risking that or getting our show done? And we decided, eventually we were like, you know what, screw it. Let's just push it off to next semester. But in the process, big thing you have to keep in mind is when big issues and situations like that happen, you need to keep in contact with your cast and crew. Say, hey, if we push this off to next semester, will you be able to do it? Especially with cast, since we'd already shot half the film, so we couldn't change the cast at that point. And so basically over the summer, we just kept in contact, and then found out that a lot of our cast members couldn't make it back. So that involves script rewrites. Like I said, be willing to sacrifice your creative vision. And so we get back, and this is what a lot of you first-time producers might not be as familiar with, is when we were back, we had to come up with a detailed COVID-19 plan, because obviously coronavirus is still here. It's just as dangerous as it was when we decided to cancel last semester. The difference is we know about it now. So, and you could do a whole workshop on how to make a COVID plan. But basically, the key to the COVID plan is your COVID captain. You need to choose someone to be on your set and watch and say, all right, these are our COVID restrictions. This is what we have to do. And that is like the most essential person. They could be an AD, they could be a producer, they could be an associate producer, like literally anyone. It's just important that you have that person. And on our set, we actually, because again, we also could only have the new restrictions are we can only have 5 crew members in a room at a time. So it's like, how are we going to shoot with 5 crew members? And we realized that what we could do was divide our crew into 3 different teams. One that was set up, so that's lighting and production design. One team for shooting, so that team was cast, sound camera team, and then we had like a control team, so that was like producers, ADs, APs, like different things like that. And basically we had one COVID captain per team, and then one like overarching COVID captain to ensure the COVID safety of the entire set. But a key thing to do when you're in this process is you always need to ask your crew members, are you comfortable with this? Are you okay with this? Are you okay with shooting? Because if someone doesn't feel comfortable, you need to make sure that you don't force them to do anything that they're not comfortable with doing. And like I say down there, what did I learn from this whole experience is you can also never ask a crew member to do something you wouldn't do yourself. And that's not just like with COVID, that's with everything. And that being said, I mean, obviously I'm a really bad actor. So like, I'm not going to be like, obviously I'm not going to act myself, but like, so I don't mean in that sense, like, but like, it's not something that you can't do. It's something that you wouldn't do. Like, let's say you're asking a crew member to fake fall, right? Would you yourself want to fake fall onto like hard cement? Probably not. So don't ask anyone to do that. Don't ask your cast to do that for a shot, just to get a shot. Safety is just super important. Another thing we had an issue with during COVID was location. And we ended up putting that off, which was one of our bigger mistakes. We kept thinking, okay, we'll find a location, we'll find a location, we'll find a location. And I think a lot of that was just the whole stress from the whole COVID situation. And then we were a couple weeks away and we didn't have a secured location. But with that one, we were able to find, actually, luckily, we were able to find a house that I had a connection to, like the people who built it. It was a newly built house with no furniture, nothing, just empty. So we were like, okay, there's no people in this house. That's perfect for COVID. And there was a yard, so we could keep people who weren't working outside safely. And we ended up going with that house, and it ended up working out very well. I would say the biggest issue with that whole process was just trying to find a place, and we contacted the Emerson like location person, and she really didn't give us a lot of help. She was like, oh, just search within your own networks, which is what we ended up having to do, but it was annoying. Another thing in this situation is EIV is very helpful. So for instance, we had a crew member who couldn't make it last minute. We reached out to EIV and said, hey, we need some help. And EIV will help you with those things. EIV is your friend. They're there to help you with things like that. And they reached out to all the other crews and said, hey, is there anyone available? And we ended up finding someone to do lighting for us. So working with EIV is always helpful. Like they're your friends. Use them. And then obviously we had other roadblocks on set. Like I said, I've mostly talked about like pre-production issues, right? But with my most recent shoot, which was for Final Girl a couple weekends ago, we had a couple of, again, minor issues. The first of which was we got all our equipment, we were unpacking, and we realized we didn't have a monitor. for, monitor like attached to our camera. And that set us back like an hour on production for the entire weekend. Because we had a very tight schedule. We had a lot of shots to do. And so we ended up just saying, all right, we can't find a monitor. We can't find a way to do this. Let's just shoot without it. It's going to be difficult, but it can still be done. So when I say make best of what you have, it's like you're not on any film set, you're not going to get all the equipment you need. You're not going to have the right stuff to get every single shot. So you have to be willing to sacrifice certain creative decisions in order to get it done. Another thing is that ended up happening from this was, like I said, because of the whole monitor situation, we took too much time trying to figure it out, which is, again, another mistake I've made that I've learned from now. But we ended up being, I think, an hour behind on our production schedule. So it was the end of the last night, right? Because it was a two-day shoot, and we still had one more scene to shoot. And so here we were in this situation. And the train that would take people home was coming in like 30 minutes. And so I was talking with, the other producers, my AD, saying, all right, what can we do here? And again, first priority is the health and safety of your cast and crew. So we've been shooting all weekend. It was literally a 10-hour shoot day. We don't want to keep people longer than they're needed. So we said, okay, what cast members can we send home? Because we want to get most of our crew home. And we were thinking, okay, next we wanted to like evaluate the situation to see how can we get this done, right? So we look at it, and our lead actress isn't available for any other weekend. She's super busy. She's awesome, like literally awesome. She does everything, like super involved in everything. So she had no other free time besides this one weekend. And we were like, all right, so what are the scenes that have her in it? Let's get those scenes done. We could reschedule a shoot for the other scenes that we end up missing, because we had like a couple things left to shoot. So we said, what crew can we send home? What do we need to shoot tonight? What can we push off? And I basically went to every crew member who needed to stay. So for us, that was our DP, the few cast members who need to be there for that, and our sound person. Everyone else, we already had the lighting set up. Like we could send lighting and production design home. And I went up to every person who had to stay or could have stayed and basically said, look, our set is ending. Do you feel comfortable with staying? You are not required to. Our set's over. But if you stay an extra hour, we can make sure there's a way for you to safely get home. The option is there. And we asked it respectfully, and luckily our crew was awesome. So they all ended up staying, or not everyone, but just people who we needed. And we stayed for a little bit extra time. We got what we needed done. And it looks good. I'm happy with the final product. And so takeaways. I've just thrown a whole hour of information at you. Be ready for things to fail. Like I've said over and over and over, you are not going to produce a set with nothing going wrong. Next is just collaboration. You have to be willing to sacrifice your creative vision or your plan of how things are how you want things to go. You have to be willing to sacrifice that to get the project done sometimes. Next thing, obviously, just know your priorities. Like I've went over that with like pretty much everything. Use the Ken method. My dad is late for everything. People in general are late for things. So give yourself extra time. Shoot for sooner. Don't shoot for being on time, because if you shoot for being on time, you're going to end up being late. Work with EIV. They're your friends. If you need any crew members, if you need to add stuff to the script, always reach out to them. Like this for this, the reshoots for Final Girl, because some of our cast members couldn't come back because they were taking a gap because of COVID. Um, because of that, we had to add some things into the script to kill to kill off the characters who had who couldn't come back. And there's another character who got her hair cut, so we had to add in a scene where she cut her hair. So adding in these scenes, the first thing we do is contact EIV and say, "Hey, look, we're changing these. We're cutting out other parts. Are you okay with this?" And they said, "Yeah." Um, and everything that I went over can really, it doesn't even just apply to producing. It can apply to anything. And you can take things you've learned from other things in your life, other leadership positions, um, and you can apply pretty much anything. You can apply things from like sets you didn't even produce. You can just be present on a set and see what goes wrong and say, okay, this is how I'm going to be ready for that if that happens to me. And just like keep an open mind, because there are going to be things that happen to you that you just don't see coming. They're going to come out of nowhere. And you just have to be ready for that. So that's all the stuff I have to throw at you guys. I'm going to stop share. So I was just wondering if you guys had any questions for me, not even about like preparing for things going wrong, about producing, EIV, Emerson, anything you guys have for me. Just throw it out, unless you guys want to go. It's up to you. Any questions? Yeah.
I'll go. Ruby. I was wondering if you have any advice for how to get into producing. And I know you told us EIV has like those 3 categories of producers on their projects. And if you suggest one of them to start with, or if there's anything like that, just for getting into it.
Yeah. I would say in my experience, the way to get into it is, just to do it, get an idea or find someone with an idea and then just try it out. Because like I said, there's a lot of things from other aspects of life that can apply to it. If you've ever like done any sort of logistical role on anything, that applies to being a logistical producer. Or if you have a creative idea that you want to do, say you're like into directing, or you're into, even if you're not into directing, if you're into writing, or if you just like having creative say on something, that's a good way to go. Like there's no one that I would say is more experienced than the other. If I were to have to say which one should you have one of your more experienced producers on, I would say technical, because technical skills are skills that you can't, like, if you haven't worked with a certain camera before, it's difficult to just know how to use it, or know, because the technical producer's job is to figure out what tech you need for your shoot. They have to figure out how to order it, how to schedule, how to get it to set, different things like that. But for logistical and creative, you can pretty much take any experiences from life and just apply that to it, and you're going to learn it as you go. Like there's no better way to learn producing. I've never taken a class. They have classes at Emerson that I'm sure would be very helpful. But I've produced, like I said, 2 shows now. I'm looking to pitch another one next semester. I'm going to try to produce a BFA, and I just take stuff from what I learned. So I would say if you want to get into producing, find an idea or find a friend or someone with an idea, like build your team. Like I said, they don't have to be your friends. They can be, you can make friends with people who you work with. Make sure you have people with the right mindset for things, like people who can get things done. That's like the key thing is, as a producer, if you don't have a team that can get things done, then there's no point in, having them on your team. And just ask around, build a team. Like you can ask random people who you talk to once in a class about an idea. And I would say just kind of, you could be self-reflexive about it too when deciding, do you want to be more creative, logistical, or technical? Like what do you feel like are your strengths? And I would say start with what you feel like you're strong, what your strengths are first. And then once you produce a show, let's say your first show you produce is your logistical, right? And then you watch the creative producer and say, hey, I think I can do that. Then maybe challenge yourself the next time you try producing something, and then jump to something you feel, you haven't done before. Does that answer your question, or is there anything else? Yeah. All right. Anybody else?
is there a sign-in sheet for this thing? Because I came in a few minutes late, so I don't know if I just missed it or.
Oh yeah, no, I was actually gonna do that last, so I might as well do that now. Give me a sec, guys.
Cool.
Um, it's in the chat. Here it is. Yeah, so all of you should fill out this Google form. It's 2 questions, just like what's your name and are you okay that you were filmed? I think they ask. It's the EIV official one. So this one will make sure you get credit. Like if you sign this, they'll know that you came to this workshop. So there it is. Everyone make sure to click on that, fill that out after this is done. Anyone else have any other questions about producing or how to work through the Emerson system? Literally anything. Going once, going twice. All right. I'm gonna assume you guys are all set then. If you guys have any further questions, I'm just gonna pop my email in the chat. You guys can just email me if you want like any help, like if you're looking to pitch a show. Again, I told you my name is Aiden. Aiden's actually my middle name, so my official Emerson name is Philip. So there's my email. If you guys are looking to pitch a show, just say, hey, my name is this. I went to your workshop. I would love help looking over my pitch for the show or what I need to pull together for the pitch or something like. If you guys have anything like that, just shoot me questions. It's cool. I've done it. I've pitched a few shows at this point. So as long as you guys have no other questions, anything else? Last chance. Nope. Do you raise your hand again, or is that just you just?
I kind of have a question, but I don't want to hold everybody up. Like if they don't have anything, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I think I can just email you later if you're well open to that.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Feel free to email me. Unless if you want to stay and everyone else can go, that's cool too. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I'm down for that.
All right.
I just don't want to hold you guys up.
All right, you guys all want to go? Feel free to leave. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I hope I just wasn't throwing a bunch of bullshit at you. I hope you guys found some, usefulness in this. I would say just if you're looking to produce, like just be prepared, for anything to happen. Literally, no matter what happens, just be ready. And you're not going to know everything that's going to happen, right? You can't know that there's going to be this major tech malfunction on your shoot. You just have to be mentally ready for, okay, when this goes wrong, can I handle this situation or not? And that's the most important skill as a producer, is knowing if you can handle it when something wrong happens, because you are the one that people are going to look to. So that's the most important takeaway. Yeah, you guys are all free to go. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you see me on the street, feel free to say hi. I like saying hi to people. I like having friends. So, yep.